Imagine if nobody here had ever moved. Would we have discovered that Italians love, pineapple on their pizza? Or when somebody tells you they're going to be there by 7 p.m., it actually means 9:30 p.m. depending on the culture you come from? Would we have discovered salsa, fiestas, listened to Afro beats? Would we have engulfed our taste buds with beautiful Indian food and Indian spices? See, none of this would have happened without movement. Movement enabled all of this. See, the world is a museum of people's passion projects, driven by people, shaped by culture, and inspired by dreams. Now, let me take a step back. Would any of us be in this room if nobody before us had ever moved? So I'm going to tell you a quick story. I actually come from a country in East Africa called Tanzania. For those of you who don't know, you might be familiar with Lion King. It's actually the set of Lion King, so maybe that's one way you can think about it. But I grew up in Tanzania. And my first taste of movement was when a British family decided to move to Tanzania for work, and they started a British school. This British family sponsored my sister and I from K through 12 to go to an international British school in Tanzania. This was my first taste of movement. All of a sudden, I'm exposed to British culture. I'm exposed to British tea. I'm exposed to some other things that are British, such as, I don't know if anybody here likes beans on toast, but if you do, that's nasty. I really hope, we're probably not going to be friends after this TED Talk. Beans on toast is pretty bad. Anyway, so I started going to this British school, and I did okay academically until about high school. When I got to my senior years, it was a lot tougher, and I actually did really bad. This is my report card from my senior years. Geography, C. Physics, ungraded, U. Business, E. Mathematics, U. See, with the British syllabus, it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, U. So I got 2 U's, which means you failed the class and you got to retake the whole year. And during this time period, you have to know, as a senior in high school, many of your friends are applying to college, going to universities, getting accepted to universities. People are coming, hey, I just got accepted to this university and that university. And you're there wondering, how in the world are you going to apply with these grades to those universities? Will you even get accepted? So I started applying, rejected, apply, rejected, apply, rejected, apply, rejected. And as I started seeing my classmates and friends getting accepted, my craving for movement increased even more. And I wanted to figure out a way, how can I leave to get exposed to a new world, to be able to learn more things? So after rejection over and over, one small university in Minnesota reached out to me and said, okay, you know what? We'll give you a trial period. And the conditions were the following. We're going to give you a 3-month probation period. If you do well, you stay. If you don't do well, you're out. So I tell my family, my dad's like, man, you're not even going to make it past 1 month, so I'm ready to bring you back home. So this is my first time moving to America myself. So this is what I thought coming to America would look like. And for many in the audience today, I'm going to introduce you to a new concept. There's this thing called the visa, and it's not a credit card in your pocket. For a lot of students here who are international students, they would know that it's a lifeline. It enables you to come to the United States. So I packed my entire life in a suitcase at the age of 17, and I came to the United States. Now, I didn't realize I'd be so popular at airports. See, look, when I arrived in America, I look Indian, I got a Mexican last name, Fernandes, and I hold an African passport. So guess what? Border control was my second home. I'd be hanging out there all the time. It actually got to the point I became friends with some of the people that, yo, Bob, again? Like, we're really doing this? So I also decided to bring some of my African culture to university. So I'd pull up to school in a Maasai outfit. And my professor was always scared. He's like, dude, sorry, what are you wearing? I was like, it's for my prayers. Man, you should see the professor stand so far away from me in class. He's like, yo, that kid's weird. But when it came to studying, I didn't really know what I wanted to study. So, anybody here who comes from an Asian or African background know that if you aren't going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, it felt like you guys could finish the whole sentence, you're basically a failure. So that's what I was. You're not going to make it in life. So actually, show of hands, how many of you here aren't a doctor, lawyer, or engineer? Great, all 7 of us. I'm not alone today. So during that time, when I got to America for the first time to study, I knew I had this trial period, so I had to work really hard. So I studied as much as I can. After the first 3 months, I actually passed probation, so I got to stay for longer. After the next 6 months, I passed probation again. 4 years later, I graduated top of my class in the entire university. What this led to was me getting a full scholarship to attend Stanford Graduate School of Business for my MBA as one of the youngest students in African history to attend the program. Also, Stanford granted me a full scholarship to attend this program. Now, this isn't a story about academic achievements, but rather a story about opportunity that was driven by movement and how this enabled me to do a lot of things I do today. See, today I run a company that enables people to send billions of dollars home to emerging markets. And I wouldn't have been able to start this company if I didn't take that first step in moving. See, movement didn't just change my life, it rewrote my story. But when we think about movement in this room, and especially today in the media, there's often a word that's tied with it, which is migration. And migration is often clouded with a negative aspect, especially around crisis, around negativity. And so often we view migration in a way that is reductive to societies instead of adding to them. So I'd like to look into this more and understand this better. I believe migration is not a crisis. It's actually about ambition, and it's about movement towards opportunity. Today we're all sitting here in the United States, a country that's known for opportunity. But it wasn't just known for opportunity all the time. It's known by opportunity because of the people who've moved and made it known for that. So if you look at the United States today, if we look at the Fortune 500 companies, which is the largest 500 companies in the United States by revenue, according to the American Council of Immigration from 2024, 46% of Fortune 500 companies in the United States have at least one migrant founder or one migrant leader who is the CEO of the business. They employ 15 million Americans and contribute $8.6 trillion to the US economy every single year. Well, let's look at startups. Simpler. If we look at startups, 55% of startups that are valued over $1 billion have at least one migrant founder. So what does this tell us today? What about other companies? Google, Sergey Brin, a Russian migrant to the United States. Tesla, Elon Musk, a South African migrant to the United States. NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, a Taiwanese migrant to the United States. So if we zoom out, migration isn't the crisis, it's the engine that powers progress. Because economies thrive not despite migration, but because of it. So as I was in this place and I was able to learn this, America gave me opportunity. So I wanted to dedicate my efforts to be able to support migrants globally. So to understand this better, I wanted to understand the behavior and the root cause of what migrants do and how they support their families back home. So I flew to England, and I went to East London. So there's London, there's East London. East London is where a lot of migrants live. So I'd hang out around Dagenham, Barking, and Ilford, and I'd go to the church on Sundays, and after church, I would stop people and ask them, okay, how do they send money home? What are they doing as a migrant in the UK? I would do the same thing at mosques on Fridays in London. I would stop outside of the mosque and I ask people as they're coming outside, hey, how do you send money home, and understand this behavior. It got to the point, I do this every Sunday, that some British dude called the police and said, hey, there's some Pakistani dude right here. He's like a scammer. And so guess what? The police pulled up, and guess what? The police was also Pakistani. So police ended up being part of my survey, and him and I had kebabs the following week. So what this enabled me to do is start a company that enables people, we built an application that enables people to send money home to emerging markets across Asia as well as across Africa. So I started to understand the migrant behavior better, especially remittances and how money moves across borders to support migrants globally. But did you know, according to the World Bank, last year, $647 billion was transacted by migrants in the United States, UK, and Europe to emerging markets? This is where migrants come here in the United States and work, but also send a large portion of their income home. Now, I know more recently in the news, there's a lot of negativity around foreign aid, right? And I'm going to give you some statistics that you might find really interesting. Did you know that $166 billion was sent for foreign aid last year? So migrants send 4 times the amount of foreign aid. What does this tell you? It tells you that without migrants and migrants coming here, entire nations would crumble. Entire economies would be hurt massively because there's a huge difference in what they're making. Now, one thing that I'd like to talk about is migration doesn't drain countries, it actually fuels them. And it creates a win-win opportunity on both sides. Why? You heard about the migrant earlier that moves to the United States and contributes to the US economy, where 46% of Fortune 500 companies are led by migrants in the United States. But you also heard about the migrant that comes to the United States, but also sends money home, enabling jobs, starting businesses, and sharing ideas back home for stimulating a local economy in that local market where that person came from. So both sides are actually winning. There's often an overall frame that migration is a crisis, but I actually think it's not. Now, one thing that's really interesting from our customer base is I find about 30%, many of our customers send about 30% of their income home every single month. Now, as I think about this more often, I really try to understand why. I'm going to tell you an example of a story of somebody called Ruth. Ruth was one of our first customers sending money from the UK to Kenya. She moved to Kenya shortly after turning 30 years old, after she had her second child, and she works at the NHS as a nurse in the UK. Every single month, she sends about 30% of her income home. When I met Ruth, she told me, Benji, I'm just living for my 2 sons. She recently missed her father's funeral, her best friend's wedding, and so many family activities, her child's birthdays every single year for the last 4.5 years. People like Ruth inspire me. Being far away from home, far away from family, far away from people they care about. A lot of you in the room might be in the same situation. So am I. As I sit here and give this TED Talk at TEDxPenn, the world's largest student-run TEDx conference, I don't have a single family member in the audience. I don't have a single family member in the United States. I don't have a single family member in England nor Europe, all the markets we work in today. All my family lives in Tanzania. See, migration is about ambition. It's about people being bold and taking that step to go and build in different countries, despite being so far away from their families and the loved ones and people they care about. And I remember Ruth, the lady I told you about from Kenya. Let's take a look at data to understand this better. So let's travel to Kenya. Before we travel there, there's 2 questions that I started to ask myself after I met Ruth. The first question is, how might we enable Ruth to build long-term wealth in the United States if she's sending 30% of her income home every single month? Will she ever be able to own a house, or buy a car, or build long-term wealth if she wants to have a family or bring her family here? The second question is, how might we enable those opportunities to be given to Ruth back home so she wouldn't have to travel and leave their family and loved ones in search of them? These are the questions that we should think about. But let's look at some data. So remember I talked about Kenya. So let's go to Kenya. So Kenya is right above Tanzania. If there's any Kenyans in the room, Tanzania has better music. So we're going to leave it at that. And Tanzania has better food, and beaches and tourism. But let's just, we won't go down the whole list. It's like the Big Brother that one person realizes they're the Big Brother and one person's not. We're clearly not, but it's okay. Probably Tanzanian. If you look at Kenya, remember the tea story I told you about earlier, the British tea, right? Did you know that according to Boris Johnson, 50% of the tea that's drunk in the UK is actually imported from Kenya? That's 1 in every 2 cups of tea. Tea is Kenya's largest export, bringing in $1.2 billion into Kenya every single year. However, in that same time period last year, did you know that Kenyan migrants who live abroad sent home $5 billion, which is up 18% year over year? What does that tell you? Kenyan migrants abroad bring in 5 times Kenya's largest export as an entire nation, contributing to its local GDP. Well, Benji, maybe this is an Africa thing. No, let's look at other emerging markets. Let's look at another country that's known for its tea, India. Let's go to India. Great. So did you know that according to the OEC, India's largest export in 2023 was refined petroleum, bringing in $55 billion into India in 2023. Within that same time period, Indian migrants abroad sent home $129 billion, which is double the country's largest export. Now, this is the same pattern that you're going to see across many emerging markets. But what does this tell you? The real question this tells me is talent emerging markets' greatest export? That's the question we should think about. All the people who are coming for opportunities, whether abroad or building companies locally, this is the question that we need to think about. Now, tied to this, it is this because while talent is everywhere, opportunity, not so much. And that's the question that we need to think. Now, before we start creating opportunities both where people are and where they come from, we need a simple mindset shift. 1, we need to stop seeing migration as a crisis. 2, we need to start seeing migration as an opportunity engine. See, as we look at the world where it is today, migration is the essence of movement. Movement is the essence of migration. Everything we do, every breath we breathe is movement. Every story we tell is movement. Every prayer we pray is movement. Every dream we chase is movement. See, migration, that's just humanity in motion. It's just people moving around and aspiring for chasing dreams here and there. However, migration is actually the heartbeat of progress. So I ask you all one last question. Where would you be today if no one before you had ever moved? Thank you. I think it's this way. I'm gonna get in so much trouble. I know how to hold my flag. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, cheers. See ya.